This is what I was talking about before. I'm going to go over the full list. Every Activision Blizzard game franchise Xbox now owns. After nearly 2 years since the national announcement, Microsoft has finally and officially acquired Activision Blizzard for a colossal $69 billion. This means that Activision Blizzard, which is the company behind franchises like Call of Duty and Diablo, is now part of Xbox's first-party umbrella. As a result, Xbox's stable of IPs and game franchises has become much larger, welcoming the likes of Overwatch, World of Warcraft, and more. While many know Activision Blizzard as the company behind industry juggernauts like Call of Duty and Overwatch, the company is home to plenty more games. In light of today's news, we've decided to create an easy place to see every Activision Blizzard game franchise that Xbox now owns. In alphabetical order, Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot after Activision acquired Vivendi Universal in 2008, Diablo, Gabriel Knight after Activision acquired Vivendi Universal in 2008, Geometry Wars, same after 2008, Guitar Hero after Activision acquired Red Octane in 2007, Gun, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Heavy Gear, Heretic after Activision acquired Raven Software in 1997, Interstate 76, King's Quest, thanks to Vivendi Universal, Laura Mystery Series, again formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, The Lost Vikings, Overwatch, Phantasmagoria, formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, Pitfall, Police Quest, formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, Prototype, Quest for Glory, again formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, Singularity, Ski Resort Tycoon, Skylanders, Soldier of Fortune, Space Quest, formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, Spyro, formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, StarCraft, SWAT, SWAT is a part of the Police Quest series Activision acquired, which was owned by Vivendi Universal, Tenchu, but only the games released before Activision the franchise rights to From Software in 2004, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and associated titles, True Crime. Man, I forgot about that franchise, True Crime.
My games, the True Crime.
Ultimate Soccer Manager, which was formerly owned by Vivendi Universal, Warcraft, World of Warcraft, and Zork after Activision acquired developer Infum in 1986. This is every King game Xbox now owns. Because Activision Blizzard purchased King in February of 2016 for $5.9 billion. So now these games belong to Microsoft also. Bubble Saga, Bubble Witch Saga, Hoop de Loop Saga, Candy Crush Saga, Pyramid Solitaire Saga, Pet Rescue Saga, Papa Pear Saga, Farm Heroes Saga, Pepper Panic Saga, Bubble Witch 2 Saga. What's with all the sagas at the end of these titles? Diamond Digger Saga, Candy Crush Soda Saga, Alphaberry Saga, Scrubby Dub. Okay, I'm going to stop saying saga. Alphaberry, Scrubby Dubby, Paradise, Blossom Blast, Candy Crush Jelly, Farm Heroes, Shuffle Cars, Bubble Witch 3, Legend of Soul Guard, Diamond Diaries, Candy Crush Friends, Pet Rescue Puzzle, Knighthood, Epic RPG Nights, Crash Bandicoot on the Run, and Rebel Riders. While many of these games and franchises have been dormant for years, even decades in some instances, they are nonetheless under the Xbox umbrella now. This means Xbox could theoretically revive any of them, or create sequels to games on the list. For example, just this week, Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick reportedly held an all-hands employee meeting when he was interviewed by former late-night host James Corden about a potential Guitar Hero revival and more. Speaking of Kotick, he will remain Activision's Blizzard CEO through the end of the year after Xbox head Phil Spencer asked him to help with the company transition. So, any more games you wish that would be that Xbox will basically revive?
Well, if we can provide the Tenchu series, that'd be great. You know, that earlier I mentioned in this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Personally, myself, I mean, as a business person, I don't want to own too many franchises or too many IPs that I'm not going to use, especially because it'll just be dormant and just be like considered to be like a waste of money, and as well as you're also hindering the game experience overall on future players as well if you're not going to use them at all. For example, games like what I keep saying Tenchu, but it's been so many years we haven't heard from that game in years now. It's been like 15 years almost last time they made a game of Tenchu. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
are they really going to revive these games, especially the Candy Crushes and the King games, sagas, and all that stuff. So it's kind of like is it
Well, I
really
think
worth it?
those King games sound like they're for mobile games.
Right, that too. But still,
I could be wrong, but like I've never heard of any of these games released on a console.
oh, definitely, you're right. I
And
would,
they said, and my not to cut you off, but I remember Microsoft saying the one reason they wanted Activision Blizzard was they wanted to expand their reach in the mobile market.
okay, I see.
So like Crash Bandicoot on the one, that must have been a mobile game because I never heard anything about it.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's something to be looked at with what is Microsoft going to do for the next 5 to 10 years of these franchises, these IPs and all. I'll give them time to see what they're going to do with them. But for the last couple of years now, Microsoft already acquired other resources of the IPs and all, and they barely used them, or if ever, they don't really give them direction to make new games. So it's we're looking at Redfall, Starfield. I mean, those games, of course, they could have been a
The less said
worse.
about them, the better.
What's that?
The less said about those two, the better.
Yeah, they could have actually put more resources into that game to make it better before releasing them, but they never did. It was about cheap, quick, fix them up, let's just put it out there and see what sticks on the wall type of matter. And they knew that these consoles are very expensive in today's world. The Xbox Series, the 14 teraflops, and then as well as you reduced down the frame rate from 6 frames to 30 frames on Redfall and Starfield. So yeah, I made the game at least the gameplay way better than ever before to make up for that. But to no avail, Redfall was a commercial failure, and Phil Spencer admit that. And then Starfield was later on that a partial failure in a sense. So it's kind of like it's the Microsoft is chewing off more they can bite. It can just you know it's just ridiculous. Like they're overdoing it. This is what happens when you let too many companies or too many games of different companies combine into one company, and now they're just sitting there on the shelf, or they're just not really being pushed into the proper projection or direction, even to make sure that they're working well and for the gamers, that want to play these franchises, these IPs. So
Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, I brought up the games that I wanted later. Like I heard True Crime. Like I missed when I perused through the list earlier. True Crime. That I've never actually got to play either one. If I did, I played one of them for like a few minutes, and everyone told me how much like True Crime Streets of New York was better than True Crime Streets of LA, but they both were good games in their own right. So maybe, hey, you know what? But if you're not going to do anything with, like the True Crime series, at least put the two older games on Game Pass.
oh yeah,
We're talking games from like the PS2 era. I mean,
definitely.
so at least put them on Game Pass if you're not going to do anything with them. The only problem that would happen that would be hard to do is Call of Duty, but then again, you got the permission that you needed. Yeah, so I mean, the only thing I'm looking at, Chris says Crash Bandicoot after Activision acquired Vivendi Universal. Does that mean that they own all the Crash Bandicoot games, or do they just own the games that were made since 2008? I think since they acquired Vivendi Universal, that means all the former games came with it.
Yeah. And the only thing that's has been making any Crash Bandicoot games in years now. Last time I checked. Last time I
Yeah,
checked.
there was one. Um, I'm looking for it. There was one where they said like, okay, I can't find it, but there was one that like Microsoft only owned part of one game. Maybe it was in the mobile section. Um, nope. There was one where they just owned a certain part of the games. Tenchu. It was Tenchu, but only the games released before Activision sold the franchise rights to From Software in 2004. So I think Tenchu Z, you're out of luck, but maybe the Tenchu games that came before it might see the light of day again on Game Pass. Because didn't Tenchu Z come out like in 2006?
2008 more like it.
Okay, well, they said Microsoft has the rights to Tenchu, but only the games um, that came out before 2004.
Right.
So Tenchu Z, if you were hoping Tenchu Z was going to be at the Game Pass, you might be out of luck. But if the other Tenchu games came out before 2004, they might be on Game Pass at some point. Might be.
Right. Right.
Or they might end up making a new sequel. They could, it's the possibilities there. It's almost like a wrestling promoter buying a wrestling company. He buys it. He buys the company. He buys all the wrestlers. It's like, okay, now what are you going to do with all these guys that you have under contract now?
That's what happened to Eric.
That's kind. That's kind of the situation Microsoft's in. Like, you got all these licenses, you got all these IPs. Most of these IPs, many people know, but what are you going to do with them to make back that $69 billion that you spent?
Yeah, that's the downside to all these franchise acquisitions. And I'm not saying that Microsoft doesn't have no right to own these franchises. It's just that what are you going to do with them? Are you going to make some money off of them? Are you going to have different creative directors overseeing different studios, stuff like that, to make the best games possible? No, because this is what happens. I keep telling the younger generation, or not younger generation, but the younger gamers who are on my network of friends, Xbox gaming. I try to tell, like, hey guys, if you let one company acquire all these franchises and IPs and different series and franchises, etc., they only do so much with them, and then it creates this saturation at the top, and this creates this huge backlog of IPs to be made. I mean, of course, that's what's going on right now with the Hollywood and stuff like that, with the writers' strike. But there's so many writers writing so many shows, and only so many people are watching them, and if they're of good quality, they rarely stick. They really stick to the audience. That's what's going on for the last couple of years now with these streaming services. Like, there's so many streaming services, so many movies coming out with the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the last couple of years now. Who's really interested in watching these for the last couple of years? So it's kind of like, these companies stuck their own foot in their own mouth, in a sense. It seems that way.
Yeah, but the thing is, obviously Microsoft would have to probably hire $69 billion of staff if they wanted to revive all these games. But I say, like, the ones that they're not going to revive, just put the old ones on Game Pass and get to it, sooner. Maybe you'll get to it if you see a lot of people playing it on Game Pass. Maybe you'll see a revival of that game could be down the road. That would be my suggestion. Put as many of them.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Put as many of them as you can on Game Pass, even if you have to do it, over time, months of time, or even years of time, and see if people are going back to these games. If they're going back to them, that means there's still interest in them. If they're just sitting on Game Pass, maybe they won't be on Game Pass for so long.
That's
what.
If I can say this,
that's what I would do.
Yeah. If I can say this though, Triple J, that they're willing to. I'm not trying to say that, like I said, they have every right to these franchises because they bought them and such, but if they could just like promote them, market them accordingly, properly, like they did back earlier this month, because they did a promo trailer of all the games they acquired from Microsoft Activision and all. If they can do something like that, but expand on different games with the titles involved in each part of the trailer, like they did happening with ID and Xbox and all, perfect. That's perfect right there to put in addition to the call it the Renaissance at Xbox, some shit like that, something like that. So
Right.
like they put it to that kind of promo, or project advertisement, or project marketing, you know. So
Yeah. So, like we said, it's all about what they're going to do with them now. Uh, and I just said Game Pass would be a good idea, at least to gauge interest in which franchises people still care about and which franchises people don't.
yeah,
But it's up to Xbox, because I know a lot of the spotlight was on Call of Duty specifically, and we know Call of Duty is going to continue. There's no question about that. But it's like, you got about 60 other franchises now that you could revive or make a sequel for if you want.
hmm
You got to find out which ones are still going to be marketable and which ones aren't going to be a waste of time to invest money and time into.
oh yeah,
But yeah, I just hope I'm just excited at the possibilities from Microsoft. You
hmm
know, like I said, I want to see True Crime. Hopefully, we don't get another Tony Hawk 5. Um, I'd love to see more Crash Bandicoot games. You know, heck, make a Gun sequel. Like I said, Gun was a one-time thing, and it was a good game. It could be not the competition, but it could be an alternative from Red Dead Redemption. You're letting Red Dead Redemption capitalize um, on all the Western themed open world adventures. Now, Gun could be, now that you own Gun, you could bring it back and try to make that into its own franchise if you have any story ideas.
if I compare apples uh, a rutabaga, it's still food. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, example, like Clint Eastwood Western movies. Like, how many Clint Eastwood Western movies he's been in? Clint Eastwood. So it's kind of like, he helped maintain that interest in the Western movies over the last 30 to 40 years, and then for the last 10 to 20 years, after Clint Eastwood kind of like declined on that, doing movies and such, there are still Western movies to be made of that matter, of that franchise, or of that setting as well in the movies. So it's kind of like comparing that with what you just mentioned just now, with the with the IPs and all, with the Western movies,
Yeah.
Western video games, like Red Dead Redemption and all. So
Yeah. So anyway, only time will tell, but we'll be keeping an eye on what Microsoft does with these IPs.